And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be trying together cooperatively to find The Cure. Today we're talking about Pandemic The Cure, a brand new Pandemic game designed by Matt Leacock, the one who originally did Pandemic, for 2 to 5 players, plays in 30 minutes, and this is a dice-based version of this game where you're rolling dice and working together. Is it better than Pandemic? Should you have both? Let's check this out. I'll show you how it's played, and I'll see you on the other side. We're set up here with 4 players here, and what we have here is we have some coasters here labeled 1 through 6 for dice, and those are different locations. And as you can see, dice 1 is like North America, 6 is South America, 5 is Africa, and so on and so forth. It's also spread with 12 randomly rolled dice from this dice bag here, and they're put on the corresponding number of the coaster to start with. Interesting to note that all these are basically the 4 different diseases that you are trying to cure by the end of the game. And you're trying to do this cooperatively. So here, well, it's interesting to note that the dice aren't all the same. For instance, you can look at each of these coasters and see, well, there's 6 sides to a dice. All dice have a cross, which we'll get to later. But other than that, there's basically 5 sides of the dice that have numbers, and you can see there's 1 5 on there for black, there's 3 3s on a black, and there's 1 4. Another example, like the reds, there's 2 6s on a red, there's 2 1s, and there's 1 4. So you can see the different distribution of the die just by looking at the locations there. And you'll decide whether to start at the intro level, the standard level, or the heroic level of infection rate there. And then we'll get started after you get your rolls. So there's 7 rolls with this. Interesting to note is that they actually, with this little cutout, looks like a badge that somebody would wear on a lanyard, which looks really cool. Also, each of these have their own special abilities, which we'll go over later, but all of them have different custom dice. So this will show you the 6 different types of dice, faces that are on the dice. You can see 2 of them are treat and so on and so forth. We'll go over these actions later, but it's interesting to note that the generalist and the scientist have different types of dice. Some of them allow you to do 1 or 2 different things. We have the dispatcher. Again, we'll go over the rules a little bit more lately, but each of these have different things on the dice, which is cool. We have the medic, we have the researcher, the contingency planner, the containment specialist. We'll talk more about these later. It also comes with a player aid for everybody, so it goes through the order of play and the different things you can do in action. So for example, in the order of play, first we roll the player dice and do actions. So everyone starts on the North America in 1 where the CDC is, and they roll all of their dice assuming that they're open. So let's say I was a contingency planner and this is how I rolled my dice and they came up. We'll go over some of these things. This is a biohazard. This is a bad thing because you can never re-roll this. I must put it to the side because I can't do anything else with it this turn. Notice the biohazard sign. This makes me have the infection rate go up a little bit. If it ever gets to the first of a next level, an epidemic happens. We'll talk about what happens that later. Now, for any of the non-biohazard dice, I can roll them and re-roll them as many times as I want, but I might not want to do that because 1/6 of the die are always going to be to the biohazard, and as we saw, that makes the epidemic happen more quickly. So when I have these dice here, let's look at the different things I can do. So here allows me to either use the boat to move or treat. And moving the boat allows you to move to 1 adjacent area. So let's say I move there, and I would set this aside because I've used it, and now we have a treat. Let's use this as a treat to treat the disease. Now when I treat a disease, I can do 1 of 2 things. I can either take one of the diseases, any of these, from the location I'm in, and put it inside the treatment center. Or if there are already some diseases in the treatment center, instead of placing another one in there, I can take this and put it back in the disease, basically the disease bag that has all of these. So you could be putting things in the treatment center, or you could be taking them out and put them in. We'll talk about why you'd want to do all those things later. So I'll get pushed aside, and then maybe I re-roll this. I don't really care about flying. Ooh, flying. Ooh, I get another treatment. That's cool. And by flying, if I had used that, basically you can go to any region on the map, but I had treated, so let's go like that. And my last action that I could take, I don't want to re-roll this. This is one of my special abilities, which allows me to set any 1 infection die from the region I'm in or in the treatment center to a cross and place it on the CDC. Now, each of these have basically a cross on them, okay? Now, these dice are gonna get re-rolled at certain points of the game. I'll show you when. And when they do roll across, they go over to the CDC. So let's say we had two diseases here with the crosses. Now these essentially are events that you can purchase using these. So this one would cost 3 crosses, 1 or 2. So in this case, I could activate either one of these. And let's say we activated this for 2. We would take both of these, put them back in the disease bag, and you can give any number of samples from one player to another, no matter where they are, where normally you could only do this if you're in the same region. So you would activate this, it would go away, and then you would draw another one of it through the deck, and there's essentially about 10 of these different ones in the game. So we just talked about sharing samples and bottling up samples. So let's say I had the sample jar rolled like this. Well, how do we use the sample jar? Well, you could take, for each one of those, you could take any one of the dice that are in the treatment center, take it and bottle it up to try to find the cure. So essentially I could put this dice, I basically put it like this and I put it here. Now this die is basically going to be locked. I won't be able to re-roll it until I either find the cure or there's some other things in the game that will allow you to get rid of them, but most of the time it's going to be locked until you find the cure. So after doing your actions, you could give samples to someone in the same region if you wanted to. So for instance, I'm here, and let's say the medic was already collecting bottled cures for the red disease. I could pass it to him. Number 3 in your order of turn is you could try to find a cure, and you need 13 or more to do so. So let's say I had 2 of my own dice holding bottled up, and I had gotten one for the medic, and I had gotten one from the contingency planner. So I have all these 4. What would I do? I'd take these bottles sort of off like this, and I would take all these, and I would roll it, and I'm trying to get 13 or higher. Ooh, I had a 12. I just missed. Now, sometimes you'll roll crosses, and those are 0. And so I had a 12. There's certain things that can allow you to modify these. There's some events. The scientists, you only need you need less than 13. But in this case, I did not get 13. So first of all, let's say I did, and let's show you what happened. So if I had gotten 13 or higher, I'd take one of those dice, put it on the red one. That one's cured. And the rest of these that I have, any more reds that anybody else had bottled up, plus any dice of that color, diseases from that color in the treatment center, and I put them all back in the disease bag. And then 4th is we infect regions. Now obviously you're not going to do all of these every time. Sometimes you won't be giving samples or trying to find a cure. You'll do that once in a while, but usually you're going step 1 and step 4 there. So we infect the regions. Now we do that by looking at the amount of dice that come out depending on where we are in the infection rate. So right now we would pull 3 dice out of the bag, but by the time you get all the way up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you'd be pulling 5 of them. I would take 5 dice randomly out of the bag, I would roll them, and I would place them where they go. Now look, these 2 of the crosses, they go in the CDC like we explained before, so those are actually good things that happen. But the rest of these go on the corresponding places. This 2 yellow will go on the 2, the 3 goes on the 3, and the 1 would go on the 1. Then we check for outbreaks. We would start with the region 1 and go clockwise and see if there's any more than 3 diseases of the same color. Nope, 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 yes. There is more than 3. So what happens is an outbreak's triggered. This goes clockwise like this, and then we move the outbreaker up by 1. Now the outbreak marker goes from here to 1. This is one of the ways you can lose the game. If the 1 goes all the way to 8 in the skull and the crossbones, the game's over. Now this actually caused a secondary chain outbreak because now this fed into here, and now we have 4, which is more than 3, and another outbreak. So this goes here, and we go like this, and that's how the chain reaction outbreaks can happen pretty quickly. That would be the end of my turn. We'd go to the next person, and you would continue doing this until one of the things happens. You either win by curing all 4 diseases, as I showed you before, or you lose of one of 3 ways. The outbreak marker goes all the way to here, the epidemic marker goes all the way to the end, or when you need to pull out a certain amount of disease dice from the bag and there's not enough there, you also end the game. One last thing we didn't talk about is what happens when we have an epidemic. So when these dice come out, we said when you treat them, you can either put them from the location you're in into here, or you can take it from here and put them in the bag. Well, why would you want to take them from here to put them in the bag? Well, if at any point in time, remember, if you roll any of these biohazards during your turn, this will go up 1, and sometimes you'll roll 2 or 3 in one turn. When it goes to the first one of the next one, you see this little starburst symbol. That's an epidemic. Essentially, you're going to take these 3 dice plus any of the ones that are in the middle, and you're going to roll them all together. So all the ones that are in the treatment center are going to get re-rolled plus 3 new ones, and they're all going to get re-rolled, and these are all going to get placed out to where they go. So if you don't get rid of them back into the bag, they're going to get re-rolled and put back out as diseases in the different locations. And so each time you go here, get to a new level, that's when that epidemic happens where you have to do that. And that's, again, one of those lost conditions. If you get all the way here, the game also ends. Let's quickly go over the rest of the roles. We did the contingency planner. The researcher can give samples, those bottle up samples, to other players no matter what region they're in, just like the original game. The medic basically can treat twice with that or treat 3 times with that cool thing on their dice. The dispatcher, they can roll a helicopter, which they get to keep, and they can use it to basically put any number of people from the same location to another location. Allows them to move them around. Also, during their turn, they can move other pawns in your region to any other region for free. So he's good at moving people around. Scientists, so they add 2 to the total of their roll to find a cure. So instead of needing a 13, essentially they only need to roll an 11, essentially. The generalist gets 7 dice, and the first time they roll a biohazard, they don't increase the infection rate. And the containment specialist, well, 2 things here. When entering a region, he puts 1 of the dice of each color with 2 or more dice in the treatment center. So essentially 2 of them, if there's a lot of dice of similar colors, they can move them into the treatment center, which is good. And then they have a special thing on their die that looks like that, and they can put up to 3 dice from the treatment center into the infection bag. So those are pretty much all the special rolls that are in the game. All right, so what did I think about Pandemic the Cure? Well, I had a chance to play the original version back, the prototype, a year ago at the BGG-Con tournament 2013. I made it to the finals, and then my team got beat by Ryan Metzler's team. Ryan. Anyway, I really do like this. I think it's different enough from the first Pandemic, the original Pandemic, but yet it's similar, but yet it's different. And I think it can stand on its own in that regard. I like the dice aspect. I like rolling dice. I like press your luck elements. So I like that in here. I like how moving around the maps, you can see which, from the different disease colors, how often they're going to come up in different areas. So you can try to mitigate different treatments depending on how many dice are there. Are you close to outbreaking? Well, there's more chance of black going here, which might outbreak to here. And I like that because you can put a lot more forethought into which ones you're going to treat. I like that. And every time you're rolling those dice for when the epidemic happens, when you're bringing in new infections, I like that 1 out of every 6 times you're getting a cross, which then allows you to maybe activate some cool events. I thought that was a great mechanism. So overall, I really do like this. I think it can still stand on its own because for me, when you play Pandemic, by the time you set it up and play it, for me it's usually 60 minutes because the setup time is quite involved in that. Where the setup's like less than 5 minutes. It's really quick. So I really do think you can when you're talking about setup and play time, I think you can do that with this in about roughly half the time as Pandemic. And so I do think that puts it in its own category. It's also a little bit lighter, obviously. There's not as much moving around or thought putting into that. There's a little less actions that you can take each time. It just feels like that. Rolling the dice is fun. I think it can bring new people into the hobby a little easier because it's a little bit lower barrier of entry because people are familiar with rolling dice and re-rolling dice. And then you match it up with the specific actions and the different custom dice that each people have. I love how they all have different, types of dice that are there. Just very interesting concepts there. The fact of when you're treating, do I treat it and put it to the treatment center? Or do I take that treatment center and put it back in the bag? Are we running low? Things like that. Working to get a bottle up and move things around. I really liked a lot of the mechanics, the mechanisms that are in this game. Now I like the rolling the dice aspect and the press your luck. The one downside to that, I think, is it's a gray area between like an intro game to a heroic game to a standard game because I was the scientist in our last game and my first boom we're chugging along and I roll my dice and 3 of them boom biohazards, put it right up to another epidemic that we couldn't really handle at the time. We weren't expecting to roll 3 of them that one turn, and I think it's going to be hard to predict whether a game is going to be easy, hard, or very hard with the dice. I think more so than the other one where you're mixing them into different packets and then putting them together as a deck in the regular game. That's maybe the only downside. But overall, I really like it. I think it brings a lot of new mechanisms that are very interesting, but are still similar. So here, similar yet different. Should you own both? I think if you enjoy Pandemic a lot and you're looking to get that type of experience, but a more streamlined version of that in half the time, if you're trying to open this up to people that are not used to hobby board games, yeah, and you don't have a game that does that, I think this definitely fits that niche, Pandemic the Cure.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.